Hey everybody, Chapter 14, Overview, Managing Conflict and Change. Um, this is, well, it kind of ties in nicely to our previous discussion, kind of gets into all this deals with conflict. Are they interpersonal, interpersonal, all these other types of conflict, strategies for trying to deal with the conflict. I've got a couple extra handouts or one extra handout out there, the DESC scripting for you on our Blackboard site in relation to this chapter. And then kind of how change feeds into this, because people resist change and often it causes a lot of problems. Boy, I got wild hair here going on. I've had my headset on and off all day. Sorry about that. Getting towards the end of the day here, I'm starting to look a little raggedy. Conflict. Now, people think conflict's bad. It's not always bad. There's positive and negative aspects of conflict. The book talks about it a little bit here. If you don't have conflict, you can have groupthink. And we already know the pitfalls of groupthink. So conflict doesn't mean that it has to be a huge fight. Conflict doesn't mean it has to be nasty at all. Conflict can just simply be, well, you know, I disagree with what you're saying based on what I'm hearing right now, but tell me more so that we can kind of take this apart and explain it more to me. To me, conflict is a conversation. People get so worked up. Oh my gosh, I get emails from students that are just like, ah, you know, and then I read through them and say, oh, okay, let's settle down here. And I go back point by point. We go through everything together, and pretty soon they go, oh yeah, I guess it wasn't that bad. Then there's different types of conflict, and you're actually going to be dealing with this in your discussion board for this week that goes with this chapter, the intrapersonal and interpersonal. So I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to let you guys read that because they're both they're two different things. You know, when we have conflict, they're not always between two people. Sometimes it's about the system, okay, that there's someone struggling with the system. 4 gens in the workplace kind of ties into the discussion on the supervision and diversity on that little box on page 385, when generations collide. So there's a lot of room for conflict. Most of it's based on perception. Remember, perception is reality, okay? Then it goes into there's structural conflict, strategic conflict, all that good stuff. Managing interpersonal conflict. You're probably going to run into more of that than anything else. Conflict between people, between two people. Not necessarily between you and someone else. Could be you and your boss, could be you and a peer, could be you and an employee. But oftentimes it's between your employees. I mean, when I talk to people, including, you know, in the private sector when I was a manager, you kind of feel like the babysitter sometimes. Like the kids are always fighting. Oh my gosh. So there's some strategies, and again, this is in your discussion board. So, you know, read through this. Did you use for the situation I'm asking you about, do you using the compromising, avoiding, forcing, or resolving strategies? Resolving is, you know, like problem solving. Initiating the conflict resolution. This is a very straightforward discussion, but what I really want you to take away from this is please don't wait. Don't let things build up. Now, I know we're from, you know, the Midwest. We're nice, right? Minnesota nice. Wisconsin nice. So, you know, we often let things build up. We kind of, we're usually along somewhere between aggressive and passive, or passive aggressive. We're often not very assertive. A lot of people will think they're assertive, but they're usually aggressive, or they're passive aggressive. And that means that they wait until they're mad and then they blow. Okay. So don't wait. You know, look at the model on the bottom of page 389. Start figuring this stuff out. Start practicing. Start thinking about, how do I keep my emotions in check? How do I not let my heart rate rise because I'm going to have a difficult conversation? It's just a conversation. If you wait until it's big, then it's bad. Then your heart palpitates. Don't wait. Okay. Responding to a conflict, you know, make sure you understand the problem, understand the solutions, understand what's been done in the past. That's where you become a little bit of an investigator. Let's ask lots of questions before we all get excited. Let's figure out where we're at, because half the time, I guarantee you about 50% of the time, conflict is due to misunderstandings, and that's it. Somebody thought that somebody else was kind of snotty in an email because they misunderstood the email. You know, someone looked at them a certain way. Oh, for gosh sakes. Yeah. So Make sure that you respond in a way where you're a little bit of an investigative reporter here. Then they give you this little model on the top of page 391, you know, listen to the complaint, blah, blah, blah. So you can read through that. Then you become the mediator. And I gave you a little ditty in our agenda called Speak and Disclose. I put that right in the agenda for you. It's another tool for the toolbox. That baby works great. Okay. You use a timer too. Don't let people go crazy with, and you're going to have to play with people a little bit on this until they get used to this, because you say, okay, listen, I'm going to give you, 5 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever you decide, to explain yourself. They will start rattling off and start venting. It'll go nuts, right? Next thing you know, ding, dinger goes off, and they go, well, wait a minute, I'm not done. I have a lot more to say. That's not to say, well, no, I'm sorry, it's actually their turn right now. Now, it's not that you're not going to let them finish. They need to understand to speak and think in a concise way. They need to get their thoughts together. This is not a ranting and a raving session. This is not what we're here for. They learn pretty quickly. They really do. I've done this many times, and it works great, okay? You just kind of got to get people used to the whole idea. You have to control the situation, use the egg timer, go back and forth, okay? So that works really good. That's a great tool. Now then, the China changes topics a little bit about to go into change in the workplace. The main thing to remember here is change is a real source of conflict. And you guys already know this. Some of you really hate change. If it's this, you hate change for that, but you like change for this. Everybody's got their perspective about change. And then we have our stereotypes because, old people, they don't want to change, right? I love change most of the time. Depends on the source of the change, right? Look on page 393. Three-prong approach is the source of the change from management, employees, or external forces. That has a great deal to do with understanding if it's causing resistance to the change. The biggest reason people resist change is fear. They just don't know the outcome, so they're fearful of it, so they resist it. So if you're going to implement change, you have to look at these ideas, like on page 395. The supervisory skills, that little box, that's a good way. They kind of give you some good ideas in there, how to they give the example of the production supervisor stimulating innovation. But if you look at then the implementing change section, that model, the Lewin model, unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. That's like, how do we unfreeze someone's perception, that's in stone about this, change them, get them to behave or think differently about it, and then refreeze that as that's the new perspective. Very hard to do. So they take you through that. Then they get into the organizational politics and power. Now, this isn't really part of our competencies, but I wanted you to just review it so that you understand a little bit of it, because you aren't going to have, if you're not in my program, you won't have classes that are going to talk a little bit more about sources of power and such. How many of you knew that there are 7 different kinds of power? And this book doesn't get into it, but there are also then 9 types of strategies that we use within those to gain those different kinds of powers. And then when you look at the list of 7 things here, legitimate, reverent, expert, coercive, reward, connection, or information power, which do you think is the most powerful? So think about that for a second. Read through this, and which one for you would have the most power? Which one of these could make you walk through fire for someone? Usually isn't a reward. Coercive, almost never. Generally, I'll let you guys think. I don't know if I should give you the answer, but I have to. Most of the time, reverent power is the most powerful. If you build a relationship with someone, a strong relationship with someone, they'll walk through fire for you before they will for any of these other reasons. You can tell somebody, take your shoes off and walk through that fire right now, or you're fired. They'll say, well, see you later. I ain't walking through no fire pit with no shoes on, even with shoes on. Building a power-based political struggles, they get into a little bit of that. So chapter 14 wraps up this whole discussion on, employee managing conflict, employee behavior, and all that good stuff. So that wraps up our chapter 14 overview. See you next time.